All right, let us proceed. Let us proceed. All right. Hello, Laura. Good to have you. All right, questions, comments, considerations from the assembled group and so. What do we got here? Anybody and everybody, nobody. We have a question that's on the floor here. I will happy to be sure with you here in a minute. But first, is there anybody else before we get to that? Because that may take a few minutes. You had one, but you forgot it. Okay. Okay, Joe. Well, they all were, in various ways. Trajan, Emperor Trajan. Right now, in the martyrs that we're looking at in the saints, Trajan is I'm going chronologically. Okay. I had different ways to do it. I could have gone alphabetically. I could have done, and I decided to go chronologically. And so we're right now in the era of the emperors. Were considered to be good emperors. Okay, if you read history, you will hear about some of these emperors. Hadrian, for example, which is Trajan's son or grandson, being good emperors. All right, they were good emperors in the sense that they ruled mostly fairly, with a few exceptions. They weren't too tyrannical. They weren't too personally, frankly, crazy. Like Commodus, for example, he was a nut. Caligula was crazy as a loon. He's the one who made a horse a senator, and even built him a little stable in the Senate so the horse could attend Senate meetings and stuff. So there were some real ding-dongs, and of course Nero, he didn't have all of his oars in the water either. But Trajan, Hadrian, a few others are considered to be good emperors. And what was going on in Rome at the time, and when I finally get back to talking a little bit about the history in the church and all that, we start going through some dates and things like we used to do a couple years ago before we started this worldwide religion thing. Anyway, what's going on in Rome is that there is a lot of opinion in Rome by the philosopher people that, much like in America, I don't know if you heard him the other day. Was it McCarthy? I think it was McCarthy. It was one of the Republican leaders in Congress, and he said that we're not addressing the real issue with the shootings. The real issue, there's a connection between the shootings and taking prayer out of the schools. Okay? So in Rome was having a lot of the same problems we're having today. In other words, there was a lot of corruption. The politicians were very divided between various parties. They weren't getting a whole lot done. There were a lot of problems in Rome itself, in the city of Rome, that was managed by the empire government, and they weren't doing a good job of it. And so some of the writers of the time, and you got to understand, the philosophers at that time were very popular people. They were like the Hollywood people we have today. Okay, the philosophers in Rome and in Greece too, but especially in Rome, were the entertainment. Okay, that was the movies, that was the newspapers, that was the TV that was the internet of their day, and so they would put out these flyers or these papers or whatever you want to call it, or publish in public. They would make articles about what they thought was wrong with Rome. And a lot of the philosophers at the time felt that what was wrong with Rome was they had left the old-time religion. Okay? In other words, guys like Seneca, for example, Suetonius, Tacitus, Pliny the younger, Pliny the elder, these guys, they would write things and they would say, look at the Pantheon, for example. They're not having the kind of sacrifices they used to have. People aren't coming and sacrificing to the gods. and goddesses, right? Religion has fallen on hard times. There's not as many priests as there used to be. We're not producing priests. We're not producing priestesses. We're not producing Vestal Virgins anymore. Used to be 20 Vestal Virgins at Juno's temple, for example. Juno is the wife of Jupiter or Zeus, and Juno was very popular in Rome because she was the goddess of motherhood and the hearth, and the home and stuff like that. And she had the Vestal Virgins, not only, but other ones too had Vestal Virgins. But the people would complain and say, I went to Juno's temple and found only 2 or 3 Vestal Virgins serving. What's going on? What's the matter with our young people? They aren't showing up at Juno's seminary, or whatever, and turning out, devoting their lives to the service of the gods. And so there was a lot of talk about this old-time religion. And some of the emperors, Trajan being one of them, really thought, well, I really got to get everybody on board to sacrifice to the gods, burn incense to the gods, pray to the gods, serve the gods. That way Rome will get better and will solve a lot of our problems, okay? Now, Romans, it wasn't as though Romans didn't like the Christians to have their own God. They were pretty accommodating. If they took over a country, they were not always, but in very often, in many cases, they would say, "Fine, you have your gods. That's fine, but you got to have ours too." Okay. In other words, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but you still got to burn incense and make sacrifice and pray and whatever to the gods. And of course, in not too long a period of time, the emperors themselves became gods. Not every one at first. Not every emperor declared himself a god. But eventually, it became part of the job. Okay? When you became emperor, you were seen as divine. Okay? And that just became the thought. All right? Now, so guys like Trajan, they would say to the Christians, look, fine, you want to pray to Jesus all day long. I don't care. You want to have this weird, what they call weird triune God? Fine, we don't care, all right? But when it comes time for a public display of religion, you better be out there, and you better be burning incense, and you better be praying to Jupiter, and you better be giving sacrifices and supporting the work of the temple and so on and so forth. You better be doing that. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble, right? And if you read a lot of this martyr stuff, it wasn't about, well, you can't worship your own or you can't do this, although sometimes it was, obviously. But most of the time in this period, the problem was not what Christians were doing, it was what Christians weren't doing. They weren't supporting the public religion, okay? And so that's why Trajan was so hard on some of these people. And too, a lot of these people were popular. The Christians were doing a lot of charitable works, they were doing a lot of good things, and they got a lot of attention. And then when somebody who has all this attention, who is thought very positively, snubs his nose at the gods, you can't have that. All right, you just can't. You can't have that. You've got to make an example out of them, and so frying them in a pan or skinning them alive or cutting their heads off or whatever. Those were ways in which you could say, "Hey, don't follow these people," okay? Because if you follow these people, that's what's going to happen to you. So that's why Trajan and some of the other emperors were so tough on the Christians. And to be fair, the Christians had a very, what I want to say, stark position, all right? They kind of, in some cases you might say, they kind of went out of their way looking for trouble. They wanted to witness, which is fine, but they wanted to make, news too. And this was their way, I think, of doing evangelism. All right. In other words, they weren't content. Many of them were not content to work behind the scenes quietly and just be good Christians. A lot of them wanted to work out in the public and make public stands. Okay. And I'm not saying that's wrong. But you know, when you do that, you're going to get stepped on. You know, that's just the way it is. You're going to get stepped on. So, yeah.
What kind of sacrifices are they making? What do they need to make?
Mostly small animals, rabbits and stuff like that. Sometimes wine, sometimes bread or grain, fruit sometimes.
So what's human?
No. Human sacrifices were never a big deal with either the Greek or Roman gods, you know, the whole Olympus pantheon. Greek gods and Roman gods are almost the same, just different names for the most part. Human sacrifices were never a big deal with most of them. Human sacrifices were more, you would see that among the Teutonic peoples, the Druids, the Saxons, the Goths. Some of those, they did a little bit of human sacrifice. The Parthians, of course, did a little bit of human sacrifice. Hindus, a little bit of human sacrifice. Some in Egypt and Africa, a little bit. Of course, the child sacrifices in Palestine and in Babylonia. But no, Greek and Romans were not big on human sacrifice, for the most part. Anything else? Okay, we have a question here based on meditations for June 9th, and we're talking about the Pentecost incident where people are, the crowd is hearing the apostles declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues or in our own languages. And the comment that is made in the liturgy, notice that's how he begins. In the liturgy, worshipers ask God, "O Lord, open my lips." Then they promise, "And my mouth shall declare your praise." How true is that? ? Sadly, we often gossip instead, speak terribly about those in positions of leadership, complain, express doubts about God's goodness, wisdom, or daily care, hardly declarations of God's praises. So there's a lot of comments in here. So let's take them one by one. Gossip instead. Would you agree with that or disagree with that? It does. Gossip is a pretty big term, isn't it? Okay, what do we usually think of? If we were to define gossip, how would we define it? Yes, sir.
Something that you think is true about somebody else. To me, that's gossip. If it's based on fact, it's a discussion.
Okay, all right. Yes, ma'am. That's the way we usually define it. When we use the term gossip, we're usually talking about something that's negative. Not always, but in most cases, we're saying something about somebody behind their back that is unflattering, shall we say, all right? So that's kind of a definition. Now, that's not 100% accurate. Gossip can be anything. Gossip can be, as your pastor told you in catechism class, gossip can be telling the truth about somebody. But the truth is not flattering. Okay? It's not something, and it's not something of general knowledge. It's because it's something you know, maybe you and one or two other people know about this individual, and it's not flattering. Okay, it's something not good. And you make it known to someone else. And you increase the circle of people who know this. As we were told when we were talked about the eighth commandment, that would be included in that. And that is of course very popular. And it's 99%, well, maybe not nice, 95% of the news media today, especially on television. Okay, it's a lot of innuendo. It's a lot of opinion. Sometimes it's really hard to tell what's opinion and what's just a statement of fact. Sometimes things are stated like statements of facts that really are not corroborated by actual events and so on and so forth. It's like in these hearings, a witness or somebody saying, well, it seems to me, or I'm sure that President Trump wanted to do whatever. He wanted to have a coup d'etat or whatever. Okay, well, that's gossip. Okay, you don't know that. We can't read people's minds. All right, and then okay, fine. We could look at emails and we can look at public statements and we can say, well, it seems this or seems that. But to say somebody has a thought in mind when you don't know that is gossip. Okay, so we do a lot of that in our society. Right? Ever since we were kids playing telephone, right? We do a lot of that, and so the guy is accurate there when we say, hey, we want to speak only what is good and noble and right and true, but we do have a problem sometimes with that. So speak terribly about those in positions of leadership. What do you think about that?
Senators and congressmen.
Uh-huh. Yes, we do, don't we? And we have that right, don't we, as Americans? Yes, we do. We can say pretty much whatever we will. We can say, I think the president stinks. I think his ideas are stupid. I think his policies are stupid. I think his statements are stupid. I think he's senile, or whatever. You can make as Americans, we have that freedom to do that. All right. Now. One comment, and as I told Rebecca, I was going to ask you this anyway. There was a conference. I don't know where it was exactly, but there was a woman speaker at a conference the past week, and you've heard this before. It's a quote from the Psalms. People ask her, "How should we, or should we pray for our current president?" And the lady responded with the Psalm, I think it's 108, where she said, "May his days be few, and may he soon be replaced by another." And she got a big roar of applause from the crowd, and she laughed, and isn't that funny, and so on and so forth. Okay. Well, there's a problem with that. What's the problem with that? Yes, ma'am.
We are required to honor our mother and father, and the government is in that position. And when we say things like that about people in position, we're dishonoring.
Yes. Well, and not only that, but St. Paul, in his letter to Timothy, comes right out and says, pray for the king. And when Paul writes that, who's the king? Nero, who eventually cuts Paul's head off, or has it cut off. All right? So, I mean, and of course, Romans 13, right? All the powers that be are there by God, and so on and so forth, and, honor the powers that be, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, she made a funny, and everybody got a big kick out of it, and oh yeah, isn't that hilarious? You can do both as an American. And let me explain that. You can pray for the king in a positive way. In other words, the president. You can pray for the president in a positive way. May God enlighten him. Okay? May God reach him and teach him the truth. And at the same time, you can pray for his health and well-being and the health of his family, and you can do that. That's a good thing to do. But you can also say, may this guy get wiser. May God wise this guy up. Okay? And you can say, if it be your will, God, replace him. If it be your will. If he won't wise up, then do what you need to do, God. But our country is going in the wrong direction. We need different kinds of leaders, perhaps. We leave that up to you, Lord. So wise this guy up or replace him. Okay, you can do both. There's no reason that you can't do both. Right?
Stand behind his oath of office.
Well, right, sure, yeah. Make our legislators actually representative of the people. That's what they're supposed to be. Okay, not representative of the lobbyists, not representative of the corporate interests, or themselves, right? Not out for power, but out to do the right thing. How many times, I don't know about you, but I've written many times to Congress people and senators just telling them, just do the right thing. Just do what's right, do what's good, do what's moral and ethical and proper. That's all. It's rocket science, folks. It's not that hard. Okay? So can we say bad things, complain terribly about those in leadership? Sure we can. Okay? We have that right to do that. But at the same time, we also have the responsibility to uphold them in their office and to pray for them in that way also. So we have the responsibility to do one or the other. And I think probably part of the problem too in our society, even among the conservatives and the Bible believers and Christians and stuff, is that once they find themselves a good enemy, whoever it happens to be, whether it's Hillary Clinton or whether it's Obama or anybody that they see as an enemy, they forget the two parts that they're supposed to do. Okay, they tend to let's just get rid of him and we don't have to do what he says and all this. They completely forget the idea of the two kingdoms. And it is not our purview to forcibly, let's say, revolt or rebel. Okay, I do kind of chuckle at the Proud Boys being charged with sedition, because if you look at the charges and if you read through some of that stuff, you would say to yourself, well, that's kind of interesting, because if those charges were made, those charges today could easily be made against Madison and Hamilton and Washington and all the other guys in 1776. So in a way, it always kind of depends a little bit on whose ox is being gored, if you know the meaning of that old saying, okay? Yes, ma'am.
Take that a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of our supporting candidates,
Mm-hmm.
news stations,
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Right.
when they badmouth
Uh-huh.
people in authority,
Uh-huh.
they have the right as Americans to do that.
Yes.
But do we have responsibility as Christians to not support that?
Well, we did for 4 years.
Well, what you're talking about, what you're talking about basically is boycotting those whom we feel do not represent whatever point of view that is our point of view, or that we feel is the Bible's point of view. All right. I always tell people that a first level, I guess you would call it, a first level boycott is within your rights as a American Christian. So for example, if you say people come to your house, they're visiting, they're after dinner, and they say, hey, before we play canasta or whatever, turn the TV on, I'm gonna see what's going on Fox. And you say, I don't watch Fox. I boycott them because, or I don't watch MSNBC, or I don't watch CNN, or I don't, whatever, okay? Or hey, I want to see today's episode of 2.5 Men. I don't watch that. We don't watch that in this house. We boycott that in this house. All right. You go to the grocery store, and you look on the label and it says made in Bangladesh, and you kind of understand what the situation there is. Bangladesh, the people there are getting 5 cents an hour to put together that shirt to sell at Walmart, and you, no thank you, I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to boycott that. Okay. So a first level boycott is your right to do anywhere along the line. Okay. What I oppose, and I think is unbiblical, is a secondary boycott. Okay, and a secondary boycott is used most primarily by unions, And a secondary boycott is also kind of what we now call canceling. Okay, a secondary boycott is not only am I not going to do business with Walmart at all. Let's say they have one item, just a shirt that's made in Bangladesh. Now, for you to boycott that item is fine. And you can even tell other people. And you can even make a little sign and say, please don't buy stuff made in Bangladesh because it's slave labor, okay? But if you prevent or try to prevent people from going into Walmart and doing business with the entire store because of that one thing, that's called a secondary boycott. And it used to be in the United States that secondary boycott was illegal. You couldn't do that, right? A really good example is Cesar Chavez and the grape boycott back in the 60s. He sent guys around to all the grocery stores in California and in Arizona and a couple other states and picketed outside the grocery stores and tried to prevent people from going into the grocery stores and just doing their shopping because the grocery stores were buying non-union grapes. Okay, the Farm Workers Union had not yet been recognized as a union. It was called the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee, UFOC. Okay, and this was a kind of a power play for him to try to get a lot of publicity. All right. There were some fights. Fights broke out. There were some shootings that took place. It didn't get real nasty in our hometown, but it did in some other places in California. And part of the problem was that it was illegal in Arizona anyway. It was illegal. And I remember my dad's good friend, who was Sheriff Yancey, sending his deputies to the Safeway and rounding up the Chavistas and putting them in a paddy wagon and taking them out to the edge of town and saying, adios, okay? Don't come around here anymore. What you're doing is illegal, okay? So first level boycott is fine, and you have the right to do that, and go for it. Go crazy. But this other kind, the secondary kind, where you punish other people, okay, or you hold other people responsible for something that they have nothing to do with, that's not right. And it's in the same sense of canceling people because they happen to do business with somebody, or canceling somebody because they had somebody on their show, for whatever reason, or you had a concert and you allowed XYZ individual to be at the concert. Let's say you have a concert in Coachella Valley there, and Ted Nugent is going to be there, right? And you get a bunch of protesters and you circle the entrance and you don't let anybody in because you don't like Ted Nugent. Because Ted Nugent, the rocker Ted Nugent, is kind of a little bit to the right of Adolf Hitler or Genghis Khan or whatever. And that's the kind of thing, and it's happening more and more and more in America today. And that's the kind of thing that's wrong, okay? You're blaming people for simply having it's guilt by association is what it is. And the Constitution is pretty clear about that. We have the right of association. We have the right to associate with whomever we want to associate. Okay? You can't punish us, or you can't remove our rights, one of our rights from us because we associate with a certain individual. You can't do that. All right? Yesterday in California, the SPCA made a ruling that they will not allow members of the NRA to adopt pets. Now, that's taking a right away from somebody because they choose to associate with the NRA. That's unconstitutional on the face of it. I would think these people are setting themselves up for a huge lawsuit. You can't do that. It'd be like saying, I'm not going to sell you whatever because you're a Lutheran. You decide to associate with Lutherans, and so I'm not going to sell you this product. You can't do that. That is so un-American and it's so unconstitutional. It's crazy. But this is how nutty our world is becoming and our society is becoming. You want to punish people for their ideas. You want to punish people for their opinions. Now, granted, some people's opinions may be kind of crazy. I grant you that, all right? But, yeah, on the other hand, there are plenty of people that have opinions all around the board that are crazy, right? I think somebody, who born with male genitalia wants to use the girl's restroom. I think they're a little fruity, frankly. I think that's a little crazy. That's their opinion, and they would demand right to that opinion and to practice their life the way they want to. Well, okay, but if I happen to think that that's nutty or that's wrong, then all of a sudden people aren't going to want to punish me. Well, wait a minute. How come he can have his opinion, but I can't have mine? What's going on with that? So this whole concept, see, of punishing people for their associations, for their opinions, for their likes and dislikes, for what they wear, for what they buy, for what they eat, all of that is just wrong. It's just wrong. It's prejudicial, it's bigoted, it's wrong. And we should not tolerate it. But of course, it's getting harder and harder, of course, to do that. Was there one more left here? Express doubts about God's goodness, wisdom, or daily care. Well, I think we all do that, don't we? Whether we admit it or not. I think we all say, once in a while, we probably look at the world and we say, does God really know what he's doing? It doesn't seem like it does. It seems like he's gone off fishing, or he's just looked away for a minute and is not paying attention. I think we all have that feeling every once in a while, and you just kind of, what's going on? And sometimes it takes real effort when we're hearing about a mass shooting, or we're hearing about an earthquake that buries, a church, or a school full of little kids, or a hurricane that wipes out a nursing home. We're listening to that, and so it takes effort to not just go, where's God? And you have to put that thought away, and you have to think, well, God knows what he's doing, and even though I don't understand it, God's doing what's right for the world, and it takes effort. It takes effort, okay? And especially if you're not trained to do that in your life, you're not going to, of course, and therefore you're going to have a lot of people who aren't trained to do that, expressing doubts, all over the place. Okay, and it can happen to us too if we don't watch it. All right. So a good point is made here. I'm not sure that I would exactly express it this way, but as I was telling Rebecca, you're limited in how many words you can use, and sometimes you when you edit after you're, let's say 350 words and you got 500. You got to get rid of 150 words. It's tough. And sometimes you take out explanations that may have been in there about, speaking terribly about positions of leadership. Maybe his next sentence may have been, now that's fine and good according to American standards or something like that, but always remember so-and-so. So maybe he had two other sentences in there that he decided to get rid of and just leave the thought as it is. That's the kind of thing that happens with this. Anything else before we move on to Arminianism? Yes?
Make a comment on pray, "O Lord, open my lips." Aren't we just praying like, give us the right worship, give us the right worship?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he should have stuck with the. Yeah, I think he should have stuck with declaring the wonders of God. Rather than going to the liturgy, open my lips and my mouth shall declare your praise. I'm not sure that that's really what that means. Open my mouth means all day, every day. I think it's in the liturgy for a reason, and it was in the Psalms for a reason. In other words, what I have always interpreted this to mean in the Psalms is that the psalm writer is asking God to give him the ability, the right, time and effort and whatever to express his praise and thanks to God. That's all I've ever seen in that. Okay, Lord, open my mouth means allow me to participate now in worship, and allow me to say your praises out there in the world. I'm not sure. I kind of know where he's going. I mean, I know why he took off on there, but I wouldn't have done it that way. But then I'm not asked to do meditations anymore for various reasons. So, go ahead.
But isn't our entire life and everything we say and do supposed to praise?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And so when we open our mouths at any time,
yeah, yeah.
if we say the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
we're defaming them.
Yeah, and we're not doing what we need to do to proclaim the gospel, let's say, and lead people to God. Yeah, when we're sitting at a stoplight and the windows are down and somebody takes off or goes blasting through a red light and we're ready to turn left and we cuss and swear and do all kinds of stuff. Or somebody cuts us off or whatever, and especially if we have a nice big cross hanging on our our rearview mirror or whatever, that causes problems for the gospel.
Didn't Jesus himself say, it is not what you take in,
Right,
but
right.
it is the words that come out of your mouth?
Yeah, right. Oh, that's very true. Yes,
He didn't say
Yeah.
only during
right.
churches.
Right. No, so that's true. I don't know that verse speaks to that. I think those verses you mentioned speak to it more. But I get it. He probably did that because he knows people hear those words quite frequently in the worship service, and so that was a way to take off on this particular tangent. Guys who write meditations, myself included, tend to have little hobby horses that we ride, and we like to come back over and over and over to the same hobby horses. Maybe that's one with this guy. One of the things I've always objected to in our synod, in the Missouri Synod, in Portals of Prayer, they have initials at the end of the portal of prayer, so you can go back to the front and see who had those initials, and you can see who wrote that, and you could write to them yourself. All you have to do is go on the Missouri Synod website, plug in that guy's name, and they will give you an email or a telephone number or an address, and you can write to them and say, why did you say that? We don't do that. We give a list of the guys who write the meditations at the beginning of each book, but at the end of each meditation, we don't put our little initials down so you can go back and see who did that. You're always if you complain about something, you're always told, talk to the editor. And the editor of meditations for many years has been my dearest friend in the ministry, Kurt Jan. And Kurt finally, as I told Rebecca, finally called me and said, we're not going to ask you to do meditations anymore, because man, do I get phone calls. Oh, hey, and just, mostly I think my problem was very often historical allusions that nobody had any idea that existed. And so they would go try and find out what they were and didn't know, or making very, very unpopular references, like making reference, like I know one time I made a reference to the Revolutionary War as a rebellion against God, and oh my goodness, poor Kurt, he just got all kinds of nasty comments about that, and he called me and said, "Don't say that again, please," and so that kind of thing, and so my historical views sometimes would come out, and oh man, and so I was asked not to do that. Okay, yes, ma'am. One more. That's okay. That's okay.
Statement you made. So earlier you said that the Proud Boys, the charges against them would be the same as the charges against
Could be.
a lot of the revolution.
Could be. Yes.
So what you're saying is that what they did was against God.
It was rebellion. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
I've stated that many times. Now, other theologians will argue that the colonists did send Benjamin Franklin to Parliament, and he spent many years in London, and he spent a lot of time trying to get the point across to the Parliament people and the king and his advisors as to what they were doing wrong with America. In addition, the Americans always, at the beginning anyway, said, hey, we're Englishmen too, and you're treating us worse than you're treating the Englishmen in England, all right? And you shouldn't do that. Those are opinions. And Parliament continued to say, yeah, but it costs us a lot of money to put troops on a ship, provision the ship, send the ship 1,000 miles across the ocean, provision the troops over there to protect you from the Indians, Native Americans, okay? Which is what they were doing. That costs us money. We can't do that for free. Yeah, fine. If you lived in Gloucestershire, you know, we could do it pretty much for free. If you lived in York, we could do it for free. If you lived even in Glasgow, we could do it pretty much for free. Okay? We can't do it for free if you live in Boston. All right? We can't. No government, except ours today, of course, no government can just continue to just throw money away and not take in income to make it up. And for some reason, the American colonists just never got that. I don't know why, but they just went. It's just they never really understood why they were being treated different than their brothers over in England, sisters over in England. They never got it. Frankly, I think it was dumb, some of the taxes that Parliament put on. They should have taxed something else. Don't tax somebody's tea. Don't tax an Englishman's tea. That's just not wise. That's not smart. Okay. Don't. If you're going to protect the people with troops, don't do it on the cheap and have the troops stationed or quartered in people's homes. That's cheap. Okay. I mean, I understand you don't want to save a little money, but come on. Okay. If you're going to do it, you know, it would be like, okay, we're going to have a forward base in Poland, right? Which I think we do, a military base in Poland. And instead of building the base and building barracks and building buildings and whatever, we just say, well, no, just go live with a Polish family. Right? And they can feed you and they can, you know, provide you a bed and, you know, all this kind of stuff and so on and so forth. And provide you their Wi-Fi. Okay. That would be okay. We have to have somebody in Poland. Okay, fine, but doing it on the cheap. No, come on. If you're going to do it, let's do it right. You know. So anyway, I am sympathetic to the colonists' plight. All right. I am not sympathetic to the colonists' actions. The colonists' actions were wrong. All right, just like the Proud Boys were wrong. Obviously, they wanted to create true sedition. They wanted to actually do a coup d'etat. That is wrong. Coups are always wrong. Coups are always a rebellion. Now, has God allowed coups in tons of cases in the history of the world? Yes. From the very beginning, from the time of the Babylonian Empire till today. God stands by sometimes and allows the coup to take place. That's his business, not ours. Okay, we shouldn't support that. If God allows it, God allows it, but we shouldn't support it.
That day, everybody watching, no matter what party they were, conservative or liberal, was in shock on what was
Sure.
happening.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Totally in shock.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
way the media makes it out to be is that half of the country was pro demonstration. Well, that's the way the media makes it.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you, strong conservatives were literally shocked at what was happening. They were crying because we were watching it. A group of us at the bar, And people were looking at each other in shock, like, could see in their face, like, what is happening here? No, this is not the way. But what I find amazing is nowadays, when they're still holding on to this, 12 months ago, nobody was that concerned about Portland and Seattle going up in flames and, rights being taken away from people because, like you said, they're being nobody said a word about that for 4 years.
That's true, but as my father used to tell me all the time, you are conservatives, if you want to call them that, or strict constructionists or historical constitutionalists are never, ever, 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 ever in the majority, and they are never, ever, 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 ever given fair coverage or whatever. Okay, just understand that. That's the way of the world. Okay, don't cry about it. It's just understand if you take those stands, that's what's going to happen to you. And don't whine and cry about it. It is what it is, right? I remember him giving us a little speech before we went out to campaign for Barry Goldwater back in 1964. He said, people are going to laugh at you. People are going to throw stuff at you. People are going to call you names. What bother you? That's the way it has always been. Don't worry about it. No big deal. I got a really good, as a 10-year-old, a really good lesson in life. Hanging off the back of his pickup truck, throwing bundles of stickers and pamphlets and leaflets and stuff like that on street corners for the volunteers to pass out. And I got into a fist fight before the election with one of my best friends, who was a big Democrat, and I got into a fist fight with him. And my old man punished me. He punished me. I said, well, you guy was calling me names, Goldwater's in the toilet, what do you find in the toilet? Goldwater, stuff like that. And I punched him in the mouth. And we wrestled around on the floor, and the principal picked me up and called my father, and my father came and whipped me. And he said, if you can't take a little bit of name calling because you support a particular viewpoint, good grief. Get a life, kid. He didn't say it that way, but, yeah.
Kind of two issues. One, being what you were just talking on, the thing that I want to find out is who organized that event on the 6th. That was not spontaneous.
No.
We need to find that. Same with people who's happening from.
Right.
Those were all organized. Those were not.
Did you notice that nobody talked about that one name that everybody knows was instigating it? Nobody brought that name up at the hearings.
Oh.
The other
I think it's not hard to find, Tony. You have to get a permit in Washington D.C. All right, and the demonstration was always going to be. Everybody knew that there was going to be a demonstration that day. Okay,
Right.
and it was you got a permit for the demonstration, and I think it was put on by, if it wasn't put on by the Republican Party, it was put on by some adjunct to them, and then I think social media took over, and people started calling and texting other people, say, hey, we're having a demonstration, support President Trump, blah, 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 blah. And I think these Proud Boys and some of these other groups got, hey, here's an opportunity for a little rapscallionness. Yeah, sure, yeah. A lot of these things are it's like the Rodney King riots, right? The Rodney King riots years ago, right? Did Rodney King's family orchestrate that? No, of course not. Did the Black Panthers or the Crips or the Bloods or whoever organized that? No. Maybe a small group of people said, hey, let's go march around and let's complain about what happened to Rodney King. And then other people, and this was before the days of cell phones, of course, but other people got on the phone or other people just told other people, and hey, let's do this. And then, of course, when it got out of hand, people said, hey, I want a new color TV. Okay? And the same thing with George Floyd, and the same thing with any number of other situations down through the years. Americans, I won't say Americans love to riot, but Americans like to express themselves. Americans love crowds. They love crowds. I found this out. I found this out in El Paso, especially when I started my little church there in El Paso with 8 people, and in an antique store on Mesa. And I would get visitors every now and then. The visitors would come in, they'd look around, they'd see 8 people, they'd turn around, get in their car, and leave. Americans like crowds. Okay? If you've got a really, 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 really good movie, I mean a really good movie, I mean it hits all the buttons. It's dramatic. It's great acting, great scenery, great everything else, great story. It's Shakespeare, whatever. Put to music, or I don't know, whatever. If it doesn't get good crowds, and how many times? I mean, you can go on Rotten Tomatoes, or you can go on Fandango, or you can go on these sites, and you can find movies that get 99% ratings and last in the theater for 1 week. Because word of mouth, okay? Nobody goes to see it, or very few people, they think they see it, I'm not going to see that, for whatever reason. So then they don't tell anybody else that they did, and so on and so forth. And so no crowds show up, and and it never gets, and it may have been the greatest thing ever done, but no Academy Award nominations, no Golden Globes, no nothing, because it doesn't have the crowds. All right. Look at what was his name? Had the car with the 3 headlights. What was Tucker? Yeah, great guy. Super innovations. His cars were safe. His cars were well built. His cars were top of the line. Okay, but he didn't have tons of people crowding the showroom. And Americans vote with their feet. That's how we vote. We vote with our feet. Whatever is popular, that's what we go for.
The other comment was why is it every time Biden kind of gets in a line, in a sense, which is almost all the time, keeps saying, for Christ's sake, what's he trying to, why is he trying to reach Christ?
It's just, no, it's one of his, it's just one of his little profanities that he grew up with, I'm sure.
So you consider it a profanity?
Oh yeah, it's taking God's name in vain. Oh yeah, no question about it. I don't know why people haven't called him on it. It's kind of, but he's not Irish, right? Is he Irish? His mother may be Irish. I don't know. I don't know, Delaware. I don't know. Anyway, he's Roman Catholic, at least on paper. But Irish people or Mexicans too, for that matter, various ethnic groups that are Roman Catholic will have things that they say that are quite blasphemous. All right, if you look at them, what's one? I had a guy in my congregation, but the ranch. One of my ranch foremen, our ranch foreman used to say, what was it? Margaret, Mary, Jesus, and Joseph, something like that. Margaret, Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. Or Mary and her baby too, or something like that. A lot of these ethnic groups grow up with a lot of these things that aren't right out, profanity in the sense of vulgarity, but they kind of take the place of what they would say otherwise, and so that's what happens to a lot of people. I had a friend in confirmation class that used to constantly say, anytime he would have an outburst like that, he would say, Jesus Olu. Well, Jesus Olu was a baseball player. I don't know if any of you remember Jesus Olu, but he was a baseball player. I forget who he played for. I think he played for the Giants. But anyway, Jesus Olu. And one day our parochial school teacher called him on it and said, you're really meaning to say, or you're really thinking in your head, Jesus Christ is an expression of pain or surprise or whatever. And you're taking Jesus' name in vain. I remember this, his name was Lynn. He was kind of a smart aleck kid. And he said, how do you know what I'm thinking. I may just be thinking about baseball. Hey, Susalu, you know? So, anyway. Yeah. It's like I was preaching one time in El Paso, we were doing a Lenten rotation, and I just said, gee whiz, as a matter of fact. I said, gee whiz. It was part of my sermon. And the pastor's wife, he was preaching at my place, and the pastor's wife was there. And as she went out, she said, you know, you took God's name in vain. And I said, huh, what? What? And I said, no, what? And she goes, yeah, you said gee whiz. You know, that stands for God. That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking gee whiz. All I was thinking was gee whiz. You know, I mean, I wasn't thinking anything else, just gee whiz. Well, where else did that come from? It come from God. Well, but I wasn't thinking that. You know, you can't put that on me. She made a big deal about it. She called me up the next morning. I still wanted my apology. And she wanted me to come appear before the congregation some special meeting and you know, whip myself with wet noodles or something. You know, and her name was Suzanne. And I said, Suzanne, you are a Pharisee and a legalist. And I have nothing to do with you. And if you want me to say that to your husband, I most certainly will. Poor man.
What year was that?
Ooh, wow. Now you're really testing me.
50s, 60s, 70s?
Oh, no. I was in El Paso from 86, from 86 to 98.
GWs back then. Social justice warriors.
Oh, yeah.
Every single
She was just a pure legalist.
Yeah.
That's all she was. Nothing more. Yeah. She refused to she had a Christmas tree in her house, but refused to, you were not allowed even to say the word Santa Claus in their house. Everybody, Jesus under the tree, he was the present that everybody got. Nice, okay. All the people in the family got one present on Christmas morning, one. And it was usually very small, very, you know, innocuous, whatever, pair of socks, pair of underwear, you know, whatever. And she was very proud of that. And she blasted anyone who she would visit a house, or he and she would visit a house, and there would be piles of Christmas presents. Oh, she would go after them. People like that, you know, they need to go and be on an island someplace, all by themselves.
You just don't talk to those people.
Well,
Whatever you say,
it does, you know, it's no. And he went to another church, and they ran him out of that. And he went to another church, and they ran him out of there. And finally, he retired. So.
you never divorced her?
Oh no. He thought she walked on water.
She was married to a pastor and he allowed all this.
Oh yeah. He agreed. He
What
just.
point was it maybe some of his fault?
I think a lot of it was his fault. But you didn't know that woman. Ooh, you didn't know her family. I knew her family. You don't want to mess with them people. No, that would not be my choice. No. Okay, listen, folks.
Sir, didn't you
Yeah,
just say that he thought she walked on water?
yeah, pretty much.
That's offensive.
We cannot get to our Jacob Arminius. There's no way. Obviously, I would do this if I were you. Okay, I would look forward or go forward or work forward. I don't know what happened to the rest of them here. I had some more. I guess I gave them all away already, and our printer doesn't have a toner, so you're on your own. But I would, from paragraph 14 on page 178, I would read as much as you can forward, okay, so we can talk about it. I would especially urge you to look at page 180, paragraph 23 and following. There is a lot of here, and I know you may not get that far, but Arminianism is the American religion. It is the American version of Christianity. Even though it originated in the Netherlands, It is so American. It fits the American character. It fits the American style. It's like it was created especially for the United States of America. And so we're going to spend a good amount of time on Jacob and his followers. And because you cannot understand places like Calvary Chapel, First Baptist Church, the Nazarenes, the Assemblies of God, you cannot understand those groups, really, thoroughly understand them, to know why they're off on their theology and how to speak to them and how to deal with them if you have to. You cannot do that unless you have a real good handle on Arminianism. Okay? It has nothing to do with the country of Armenia. It has to do with a guy by the name of Jacob Arminius who lived in Holland, okay, the Netherlands. And so I would read ahead, starting at paragraph 14. I would read ahead, page or two, so that we can kind of proceed quickly through this and hit the high spots and come to a good understanding of why this has really captured the imagination and the enthusiasm of the American people. It fits perfectly with the Scotch, Irish, Welsh mountain people, the southern people, the Midwestern people, those in Oklahoma and Texas. It just fits them to a T. And it does not fit the Germans. It is inimical to the Germans and the Austrians, Czechs, that whole group. Okay, you're not going to find many Armenians in that group. Okay, Russians, Poles, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Romanians, Bulgarians. Not going to find a whole lot. Okay, it's inimical to those groups, cultures. But Irish, yes, Welsh, Scots, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and all those in between, and the mixture in America that they've become perfect. And especially, as I say, in the South and the Midwest. And just fits them to a T. Just really does. And that's why it is the most popular religion in America, and thus pretty much in the world when you're talking about the Protestant side of Christianity. One more question, I guess.
I just wonder how far you say we should read.
Well, I would try to get to the. Oh boy, I guess I would try to get to 25. Well, 225. If you can. I know that's a lot, but and I won't hold you to that. But he's asking just how far I would like to be able to discuss things with you, and I would say 25. But we'll see. We'll see how far we get. This is a theological discipline, and Americans, frankly, aren't real good at theological discipline. They're not real good at keeping theologies separate. For example, there's a section, I think it's after 25, when I'm comparing Pelagianism and semi-Pelagianism with Arianism, Arminianism. And that gets to be kind of dicey. But again, if you're going to understand the difference between, say, a Southern Baptist and a Roman Catholic, you've really got to kind of have a handle on that. Otherwise, and I will tell you folks, most of my seminary fellows at seminary didn't care for this at all, didn't put any time into it, didn't put any effort into it at all. And most of the pastors I know, still, the vast majority, 90% of the guys I know, don't put any time or effort into this at all. And therefore, when people come to church, and maybe they have their background as Arminianist or Pelagian, they don't know really how to deal with them very well. And it really hampers our gospel message when we don't know why people's gospel ideas are out of whack. I mean, these people are saved people for the most part. The Pelagians and semi-Pelagians, Arminians, are saved people, other than unlike the Arians, who are not, okay, because the Arians do not believe in the Trinity. But the Pelagians and semi-Pelagians and Arminians are Trinitarian. They believe in Jesus. For the most part, they believe in the two natures of Christ and the vicarious atonement and all that. For the most part, they're fairly conservative biblically. And so we're not talking about the difference between salvation and non-salvation. We're talking about a gospel that does not function as it should, and a gospel that can lead people to despair. That's the problem with Pelagian, semi-Pelagian, and Armenian gospel. It can lead people to despair and can destroy their faith. That's what's wrong with it. But of course, they don't see it that way. And I will explain why they don't see it that way. Okay. So again, we started this 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, with the Hindus, and now we're through all the religions of the world and all the religions of Protestantism, or the main ones anyway. And this is the last one. I would say of all the things that we've talked about, aside from maybe the study on Roman Catholicism, I would say this is probably the next most important, really, because again, this is the American religion. It really is. It's the religion of Billy Graham. It's the religion of Jerry Falwell. It's the religion of Jimmy Swaggart. It's the religion of Pat Robertson. It's the religion of the 700 Club. It's the religion of America. It really is. It's the religion of Ronnie Reagan. It's the religion of George Bush. It's the religion of the vast majority of conservatives in our country today. Laura Ingraham, you see on TV, it's her religion. Okay. Any other well-spoken conservative types, it's their religion. Huckabee, he's a pastor in this religion, all right, or was. Okay, so you to understand Huckabee, or to understand Billy Graham or Franklin Graham, or to understand how the 700 Club keeps going, to understand all that, you've got to understand Arminius. Okay, so I made my pitch. I hope you find the next few weeks to be instructive. All right, let's close. May the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be and abide with us all. Amen.